For convening having arrived, the Senate will come to order. Would ask that unauthorized visitors exit the chamber at this time as the Senate comes to order. Chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate, Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The journal has been read and found to be correct. Stayed up all night last night.
Thank you, Senator, for your good works on the journal. Is there objection dispensing with the reading of the journal? Reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none. Journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions introduced, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 479 by Senator Williams, the 27th. The bill without enactment, Article 8 of Chapter 12.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Resolution 906 by Senator Anderson, the 43rd. A resolution recognizing the United States military veterans and dedicating an interchange in their honor for other purposes.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 914 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others. A resolution creating the Senate
Public Safety.
Senate Resolution 916 by Senators Albers of the 56th and others. A resolution creating the Senate Special
Finance.
Tax. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 664 by Representative Teasley of the 37th and others. A bill without enactment, Code Section 48727 of the OCG. House Bill 732 by Representative Silcock of the 52nd and others. A bill without enactment.
Judiciary.
House Bill 784 by Representative Dubnik of the 29th and others. A bill without enactment, Code Section 4286 of the OCGA, relating to special
Natural
license.
Resources.
House Bill 790 by Representative Administration of the 104th and others. A bill without enactment.
Judiciary.
House Bill 809 by Representative Hitchens of the 161st and others. A bill without enactment, Code Section 48.
Public Safety.
House Bill 815 by Representative Martin of the 49th and others. A bill without
Public
enactment.
Safety.
House Bill 825 by Representative Williams of the 145th and others.
Judiciary.
House Bill 830 by Representative Hardin of the 148th and others. A bill without enactment.
Judiciary.
House Bill 833 by Representative Rakestraw of the 19th and others. A bill without enactment, Title 43 of those.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 847 by Representative Chandler of the 105th and others. A bill without to amend Chapter
Health
39.
and Human Services.
House Bill 849 by Representative Peak of the 141st and others. A bill without enactment, Chapter 7.
Finance.
House Bill 867 by Representative Hitchens of the 161st and others. A bill without enactment, Chapter 8.
Public Safety.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation, instructing to report the same back to the Senate with following recommendation. House Bill 918 do pass, and by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd. That concludes the order.
Secretary will read bills for the second time.
Senate Bill 39 by Senator Untum of the 45th and others, pimping and pandering, increase the penalty provision. Senate Bill 232 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, facilitating Internet Broadband Rural Expansion Act and enact. Senate Bill 236 by Senator James of the 35th and others, driving under the influence. County Department of Family and Children's Services be notified, endangering, require. Senate Bill 314 by Senator Jones of the 22nd and others, invasions of privacy, prohibit sexual extortion, provide. Senate Bill 318 by Senator Retta of the 33rd and others, mental health, involuntary evaluation and treatment based on consultation with paramedic, execution of a physician certificate for emergency examination, provide. Senate Bill 335 by Senator Untum of the 45th and others, trafficking of persons for labor, offense of trafficking an individual for sexual servitude, expand. Senate Bill 359 by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd and others, consumer coverage and protection for out-of-network medical care act. Senate Bill 382 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, optometrist guidance and consultation by the Department of Public Health, provide. Senate Bill 386 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, sales and use taxes, exception to the ceiling on local sales and use taxes. Transit Special Purpose Local Option Sales and Use Tax provide. Atlanta Regional Transit Link ATL Commission creates. Senate Bill 403 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others. Primaries and elections, uniform election equipment in the state provide. Senate Bill 404 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others. Public water systems, charging or assessing a separate fee for standby water service for fire sprinkler system connections, prohibit county, municipal, and other public water systems. Senate Bill 414 by Senator Tippins of the 37th and others. Charitable solicitations, local governing authorities to issue written notices for failure to clean and maintain collection receptacles allowed. Senate Bill 425 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. Professional land surveyors, provisions change. Senate Bill 426 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. Broadband Infrastructure Leisure Development Act. Senate Bill 430 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others. Elections, compensation of various local governments officials modified. Senate Bill 431 by Senator Tillery of the 19th and others. Liability not limited, effective of an owner of a land charging an admission price or fee. Provisions clarified. Senate Bill 436 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. Probate courts, general provisions change and modernize. Senate Bill 437 by Senator Payton of the 54th and others. Resuscitate parental requirement for consent revised. Senate Bill 444 by Senator Unser of the 45th and others. Georgia Alzheimer's Related Dementia State Plan Advisory Council creates. Senate Bill 450 by Senator Payne of the 54th and others. Unlawful enticement of game hunting in vicinity of feed and bait. Remove definition. Senate Bill 451 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others. State Soil and Water Conservation Commission formulate certain rules and regulation in consultation with the Environmental Protection Division of the Department of Natural Resources. Remove authority. Senate Bill 453 by Senator Tillery of the 19th and others. Local government to limit the distance between the new municipal corporations and existing municipal corporation. Requirements for service municipalities modify. Senate Bill 456 by Senator Moulton, 53rd. Quality Basic Education Act. No high school which receives funding shall participate unless association has separate regions playoffs. Provide. Senate Bill 457 by Senator Tate of the 38th. School safety plans. Conduct drills on the execution of school safety plans based on guidance from Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency. Require. Senate Bill 460 by Senator Beach of the 21st. Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Act of 1965. Adoption of a logo and brand to include the term ATL by such authority by certain date. Provide. Senate Bill 461 by Senator Stone of the 23rd. Barbers and cosmetologists. Provisions change. Senate Bill 463 by Senator Dugan of the 30th and others. Electric motor vehicles, exception for certain manufacturers, restrictions on the ownership, operation, and control of motor vehicle dealerships. Provide. Senate Resolution 681 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others. U.S. Congress proposed a parental rights amendment to the states for ratification. Encourage. Senate Resolution 761 by Senator Miller of the 40th and others. Senate Study Committee on Dyslexia create. Senate Resolution 772 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others. Joint Study Committee on Retrospective Emergency Room Policies create. Senate Resolution 778 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. U.S. Congress National Park Service, a reliable, predictable stream of resources to address deferred maintenance needs create. Senate Resolution 865 by Senator Miller of the 40th and others. State of Georgia Council on Respiratory Health Promotion and Support creation. Senate Resolution 902 by Senator James of the 35th. Joint Study Committee on Revising the Applicability and Nomenclature of the Offense of Rape create. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the I tell you what, hold on. I'd like to present the doctor of the day, and to do so, it's my honor now to recognize the distinguished senator from the 44th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senators, I am so honored today to present the doctor of the day. Dr. Todd Smith is no stranger to us. He has been here many times to help us and to make sure that we are safe and to make sure that he takes care of all our health needs. But Dr. Smith is an orthopedic surgeon, been in practice for the last 25 years here in Metro Atlanta, and is the co-founder of the Ortho Atlanta, which has 14 offices throughout Metro Atlanta. He is a graduate of the University of Minnesota. He's also on the board of directors of the Georgia Orthopedic Society and the Piedmont Healthcare, and is on the board of counselors of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. He and his actor wife, Lynn Smith, live at Lake Spivey in Jonesboro. Would you please welcome our doctor of the day, Dr. Todd Smith. Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Senator Davenport. On behalf of the Medical Association of Georgia and the Georgia Orthopedic Society, I'm honored to serve y'all today. I always respect and admire the effort of time and commitment that you folks put into this. And so I'm glad to come here and spend a day of my career in this session to add a little bit of my set of skills to help everybody here in the building carry on with good health. So I wish you all the best. I know it's a busy time of the session, and I hope you have the best of health and best wishes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hold on. Chair now recognizes Senator from the 41st.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend with the morning roll call because of other meetings in the Capitol.
Is there objection? We're going to suspend the suspend the roll call. Is there objection? Without objection, the roll call will be suspended. It is now time for the morning devotion. Would ask the majority leader to preside over this.
Who am I recognizing? 27? Just tell me what district.
Let me ask all senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversation at this time as we are preparing for our morning devotion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to recognize a senator from the 27th District for the purpose of leading the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the flag of Georgia, and to introduce the chaplain of the day.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, Georgia for all. The Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance, Georgia flag, principle for which it stands. Wisdom, justice, and moderation. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Elder Rene Alba. He is a member of the Quorum of the 70 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it is his responsibility and role to serve the members of this church. There's over 85,000 members here in Georgia, and he also has responsibility in the state of Alabama as well. He's been able to travel the southeastern part of the country for several months, years now, and again, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Elder Rene Alba.
Good morning. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle and Senator Williams, I appreciate the opportunity and the great privilege that's been granted to me to be here with you in this wonderful body of representatives of the state of Georgia. We are appreciative, senators, for all that you do. Over 50 years ago, as a family, we had the opportunity to enter into the United States from Mexico. We came through a small town where we lived in Piedras Negras, the state of Coahuila, which is northern Mexico, across the border of Eagle Pass, Texas. My father, a very law-abiding man and an honorable man, made the determination that if we were ever to come to the United States of America, we would do so legally. He did not want to put his family in any danger or have any fear cast among us because we were not here legally. So we waited until all of our papers were regulated and given to us so that we might enter this country. I love my heritage from Mexico. I love the music. I love the dancing. I love the food. Who doesn't like Mexican food, right? But I'll tell you one thing. I love the United States of America. It has given us as an opportunity, as a young man of 11 years old, to learn and to watch and to explore and experiment. My father and my mother said, we don't have anything to give you except for the opportunity for you to receive an education and to make something of yourself. Through a lot of hard work, I was able to go to college, the first person in our family, the Alba family, including cousins, to graduate from college, and then went on to get a master's degree in Master's of Business Administration from Brigham Young University. In 1998, I had the great opportunity to also make a pledge as I became a citizen of these great United States of America. And here is what I pledge to do. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance and under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this almighty obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. And I can promise you that I have done my best to represent this country no matter where I go. I've had the opportunity with my employment to travel throughout the world, through many countries in Europe, to Central America, and mainly to Asia Pacific. And it was always a great relief for me and a great privilege to enter back into the country, the land of the free, where there's courage, where there's love and understanding for all, where all are welcome. Now, each one of us has this great responsibility to represent this great country, but I feel that we have a greater responsibility to represent God. For you see, all of us are created in His image, all sons and daughters of a Heavenly Father who loves us. When asked what the greatest commandment was, the Savior replied, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Love and charity, which is defined as the pure love of Christ, is what makes us all citizens of this great country. And I'm honored to be here representing the many faiths of this country, the many religions, the many cultures that bring us together and make us American citizens, that we can, through our own efforts, individual work, and dignity and diligence, make this country great. Thank you for this privilege, and will you please join me in prayer? Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee at this time to give Thee thanks for the wondrous freedoms which we enjoy in this great country, for the ability we have to worship Thee, the Almighty, according to the dictates of our heart. We are grateful for these wonderful men and women who represent the people of Georgia, and ask Thee that Thou will bless them through the deliberations and the things they do that foremost they might put all personal and self-interest aside and look towards those whom they represent. Dear Father, will thou open their eyes, they might be able to see things as they really are and as they should be. That they may be able to look to the future by the things that they put in place for us to obey and have in this great state of Georgia. Will thou open their ears that they may listen to each other with civility and love and concern, and work together as a body in unity to bring the legislation that is required that will make us all safe in our own homes, in our communities, in this great state. Will thou open their mouths that they may be able to speak only words that thou would have them speak. And Father, last of all, will thou open their hearts that it might be subtle and softened to be able to understand the many trials and tribulations that people experience in this great state, in this great country, that we might civilly take care of each other and with charity go forth, serving each other with love. We are grateful for the freedoms which we enjoy, for those who so fought violently, that we might be able to be here exercising our freedoms. We're grateful for the veterans. We're grateful for our national leaders, leaders from every state that represent our interest. May we always reflect thy will through the manner that we live our lives. In the sacred name of Jesus Christ, amen. Thank you.
Here you go. So here's what we're going to do next.
Senator, please come to order. Are there any unanimous consents? Hearing none, does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Okay. Senator from the 35th is recognized for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I guess I'm not supposed to be the official greeter, but I'm seeing red all over the place, and I see a lot of my friends who are Deltas who are here today. And so I'd like for the Deltas to please stand up who are here in the gallery, and I'd like for our senators to give them a nice welcome. We welcome you. Thank you for being here today. And I love seeing red. We love you. We appreciate you being here today. And I'm sure that somebody else is going to recognize you, but I just came up to give my personal point today. Thank you for being here. But this is Black History Month, and we always recognize Black History Month. And today I have the honor of giving a living Black History moment. And it is a person who is actually in the building, but he is not standing right here right now, but I want to recognize him anyway. And it's whereas George Edward Clinton was born on July 22nd of 1941 in North Carolina and grew up in Plainsville, New Jersey. And whereas a teen, George formed a doo-wop group that would go into merge with his other band, Funkadelic, to form the musical collection known as Parliament Funkadelic. And whereas recording both as Parliament and Funkadelic during the 70s, George Clinton developed an influential and eclectic form of funk music that drew on science fiction, outlandish fashion, psychedelic culture, and laid the foundation of the aesthetic movement. And whereas George revolutionized R&B during the 1970s, twisting soul music into funk by adding influences from heroes of the late 1960s, including Jimi Hendrix, Frank Zappa, and Sly Stone. And whereas the Parliament Funkadelic machine ruled black music during the 1970s, capturing more than 40 R&B hit singles, including 3 number ones and recording 3 platinum albums. And whereas George launched a solo career in 1981, it would go on to influence 1990s rap and G-funk. And whereas he has been awarded a Grammy, a Dove Award for gospel music, MTV music video, etc., NAACP award, and the list goes on because I'm losing, my time is up, but I want to say that I am so proud that George Clinton, alongside of 15 other members of Parliament Funkadelic, of rock and roll are here today. We have Living Black History, and they are on the other side today, but they will come here, and they're going to be sitting at the front row, and I hope we can recognize them at that time. But yes, rock and roll music is alive and well, and it will live forever with George Clinton and Funkadelic Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 29th is recognized for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a moment today to recognize a very special birthday. My predecessor, representing the 29th Senate District, a gentleman many of you know, his name's Seth Harp. Seth is someone that I met my freshman year of high school at Brookstone School. His daughters, Leslie and Mary Rebecca, went to school with me, and Seth was our mock trial coach. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but he spent many, many afternoons coming into the school, 3 o'clock, 3:30, spending 3 hours with us all the time. I remember the first case we dealt with, it was the Busy Bee Trucking Company in a strict liability case. But he was always giving back to all of us. He made a huge impact on me during those years. He took me to my first Republican Party event in Muskogee County. But Seth's whole life really has been about public service, from his service in the Marine Corps, his service in volunteering in his community, his service in this chamber over a 10-year period. Seth was an independent thinker during his time here. He championed a lot of important causes, even when they weren't always popular. But he's been a great mentor and advisor as I've served in this Senate, even when we haven't agreed on issues. He was a big champion of Sunday sales, and my very first year here, we were voting on that, and I was going to be voting against it. And he never gave me a hard time about it, always wanted to be supportive. But just a great man, a great American. He and his wife, Linda, I was hoping that they could be here today, but Seth has been recovering from some health issues. But I hope that the Senate will join me. I know many of you who served with him. For those of you that haven't gotten to know him, you've missed a real treat, because he's an outstanding Georgian, an outstanding American. Today's his 75th birthday, and I hope you'll join me in wishing Seth and Linda a great, happy day for him. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Having had the pleasure of serving with Senator Harp, he's certainly a great American, great Georgian, and it was a pleasure to serve with. Senator from the 27th is recognized for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. We have heard past couple of months in the news about the historic tax cuts that President Trump has signed into law and that millions of Americans will be able to enjoy. There's also been some talk about how some of these tax cuts that are meant for the citizens of the state of Georgia are being held up. They're being held up because for them to get the full benefit of this tax cut, of this federal tax cut, the state of Georgia, we have to pass tax changes to our tax code. And there's a bill that passed out of the House to do just that. It lowered our state income tax down to from 6% to 5.75%. It increased the standard deduction so that every single household out there can get some type of tax savings. But this bill is being held up by Delta, by big corporations. Now, whether or not you like Delta and what they said about the NRA this past week is irregardless to me. The fact that a large corporation here in this state can say the citizens of Georgia are not going to get their full tax rebate because they want their own tax credit, that is a shame. We should not allow Delta or any other corporation to do that to us. We need to take a stand today as the Senate. Send a message to them that we're going to do what is best for all of Georgians, not just big corporate. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thanks, Senator. Senator from the 55th is recognized for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. It is my pleasure and my honor to recognize again this year Delta Sigma Theta. Go ahead, go ahead. Delta Sigma Theta sorority was founded in 1913 on the campus of Howard University to promote academic excellence, to provide scholarships, to provide support to the underserved, to educate and stimulate participation in the establishment of positive public policy, and to highlight issues and provide solutions for problems in communities. Founded by 22 collegiate women who strive to promote academic excellence and to provide assistance to persons in need. Delta's founders stepped out on faith to march with the suffragists and took a stand for social justice as their first public act. More than 105 years later, Delta women pride themselves by following in the footsteps of their founders and remain in the forefront of action as a voice for those in need. Today, Delta Sigma Theta sorority has more than 1,000 chapters worldwide and has initiated over 200,000 members. The sorority uses its 5-point program thrust of economic development, educational development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, and political awareness and involvement to create its national programs. If I could have the regional director, Sandra K. Horton, Georgia State Action Coordinator, Gwen Mayo, and the national and southern regional photographer, Letha Spivey, to just stand up and let us see who you are. Are you there? If not, let me have all of you stand up and get a warm welcome from the members of the Georgia State Senate. It's not every day that members get to welcome you twice. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 34th is recognized for a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, members, is mic on? Mr. President, members of the Senate, let's make that a strike. We're gonna do it a grand slam and go for three times. I happen to be the mom of a Delta. She graduated undergrad at South Carolina State. Dr. Wendy C. Oliver is my child. I'm not a Delta, but I did help pay the bill, so you got one anyway. Welcome.
Thanks, Senator. Senator from the 24th is recognized for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is such an honor to recognize a special birthday today. 1958 today, a very special little girl was born. In 1975, I had the honor to meet this good-looking, hot-blooded woman. Then, in 1981, I got the honor to, like every man in this room, had the honor to get the love of their life to say I do. And definitely I married over my head. But it is in great honor to wish my wife happy birthday today. She's on a little trip at Vegas. She sent me pictures last night. She went to a concert with Elton John, and she's having a great time. But happy birthday, baby.
All right, Senator from the 33rd is recognized for point of personal privilege. This should be our last one we'll get on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. This is our Black History moment. Tyra Lamont Brown is the first African-American woman hired as a pilot for FedEx. Tyra began her journey at 20 years old in 1992. While sitting in the cockpit, she envisioned her office in the sky. Tyra knew at a young age she wanted to be a pilot. She didn't know any pilots or have the money to pay for flight school. She enrolled in college and worked 2 jobs to pay for college and flight school. Tyra started networking. She met Bill Norwood, the first black pilot of United Airlines, at an event, and he introduced her to the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. The organization provided Tyra scholarships, guidance, and training. Tyra was asked by FedEx blogger, "What do you say to young people, especially girls who are interested in flying?" Tyra responded, "I tell them my life story and that the end result and sacrifices are going to be worth it. You have to make sacrifices and the road is going to be hard. I let them know that I am here to support them and to give them advice and listen to them because that was important to me. But they will have to find within themselves to know that it is achievable. I also tell young people to not allow negative attitudes to affect you. This is true for me. We can be our biggest barriers at times. We have overcome our own personal barriers to achieve." And she added, "I'm glad to be a role model for all women." And that is your Black History moment. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Yeah.
Mr. President, I move that we remove Senate Resolution 911 from the consent calendar. There are a couple typographical errors.
So noted. Senate Resolution 911 shall be removed from the consent calendar. Is there objection to the adoption of the consent calendar of privileged resolutions? Chair hears none. The resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Good. Senator from the 9th, would you like to withdraw that resolution from consideration completely or just off that consent calendar? Senators recognized.
I move to withdraw Senate Resolution 911.
All right. Senators move to withdraw Senate Resolution 911. Is there any objection? Hearing none, it is withdrawn. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? All right. Chair recognizes the majority leader. Excuse me, the majority whip. Majority leader is unavailable.
Mr. President, I like your way of thinking. If it pleases the presiding officer, I would like to ask for unanimous consent that the following bills and resolutions be engrossed. SB 309 SB 355, SB 432, and SB 458.
Majority Leader has moved that Senate Bills 355, 309, 458, and 432 be engrossed. Are there objections? Senator wish to speak to your objection? Senator 41st is recognized. You got 2 minutes to debate.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, and most importantly, the members of the public that now watch us live streaming, and we're reaching a greater and greater audience every day. So I want to remind the citizens of Georgia that we're a deliberative body, that engrossing prohibits us a chance to improve these bills at this opportunity. And I put it to you that the reason we engross is not because we're afraid the bills will be made worse, but we're afraid the opportunity to make them better will actually exist. And that may not be politically what the majority party wants. I wish we would vote against engrossment so that we can work on these bills and improve them. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, all those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. It's on here. On the motion, the yeas are 35, the nays are 13. The motion prevailed and the Senate bills are engrossed. Moving on to our order of business, third reading and consideration of our bills and resolutions. The Secretary will read Senate Bill 409.
Senate Bill 409 by Senator Harper VII and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 6 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to negotiating railroad crossings and entering highways from private driveways so as to require that persons driving vehicles shall exercise due care and caution for other on-track equipment as for trains at railroad grade crossings and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Recognize Senator from the 7th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, very simple bill. Senate Bill 409 was a bill that was brought to my attention by a constituent in the district, and we worked with the railroads and as well as some of the unions that represent our railroad industry and have come up with a language that's before you that's similar to what is done in Tennessee and Michigan. It simply adds the words on-track equipment to when you will have to stop at a railroad grade crossing. And there is a sample on your desk of what this equipment looks like. Some of it is as big as trains and as heavy as trains. So, Mr. President, if there are no questions, I yield the wheel.
You do have a question, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 34th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, in lieu of several of these trains having different accidents, is this just another safety measure being added?
Yes, ma'am. I would say that.
Thank you, Senator.
I would agree with that. Yes, ma'am.
There are no further questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46, the nays are 0. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority, it is therefore passed. Secretary, please read caption Senate Bill 446.
Senate Bill 446 by Senator Harper the 7th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 11, Title 40 of the OCGA relating to abandoned motor vehicles so as to revise the times for which a motor vehicle or trailer becomes an abandoned motor vehicle and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Senator from the 7th is again recognized to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Senate Bill 446 does a couple of things in regards to abandoned motor vehicles. It clarifies that abandoned trailers are also considered abandoned motor vehicle. It ups the derelict value of a vehicle from $300 to $600. And it also creates a provision if a individual whose vehicle was abandoned vehicle was towed, that if they either fail or decline a hearing through the judicial process and waive that right, then an administrative process. This sets up an administrative process through DOR to be able to foreclose on that lien by the company that towed the vehicle. That's the basic provisions of the underlying legislation, Mr. President, and if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
There are no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, nays are 1. The bill having received the requisite constitutional majority, it is therefore passed. I want to recognize the senator from the 48th to recognize some special guests here with us today.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's my privilege to welcome to the State Senate chamber today representatives of the Ismaili Muslim community, 15 million strong worldwide. We have with us in the gallery today members of the Ismaili Council leadership, and I want to, on their behalf, to extend to you an invitation to the Ethics in Action display that they have here at the Capitol Complex from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. today. Please join me in welcoming these special guests.
Secretary, please read the caption. Senate Bill 293. Sorry, 395.
Senate Bill 395 by Senator Watson and the first and others, a bill entitled Act to amend Article 10 of Chapter 7, Title 50 of the OCGA relating to the Defense Community Economic Development Fund, so as to create the Georgia Joint Defense Commission to provide for the membership and purposes of such commission and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security offers the following substitute Senate Bill 395, a bill entitled Act to amend Article 10, Chapter 7, Title 50 of the OCGA relating to the Defense and Community Economic Development Fund, so as to create the Georgia Joint Defense Commission and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Senator from the first, come forward to present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here to present Senate Bill 395. This forms a joint defense commission that will be made up of 4 people from the Senate, 4 people from the House, and 8 representatives of each state military institution or region that we have, including the director of the Governor's Defense Initiative, Economic Development Commissioner. This commission will be formed to advise the governor and legislature on defense and military issues, but make recommendations, follow through with design and execution, and to help prepare the state of Georgia for the potential for base realignment and closure of military institutions, or what is also called BRAC. This council will meet and give us an annual report, and this is an unpaid commission except for the per diems. If there are any questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well. Thank you.
No questions. Questions on adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. The yeas are 49, the nays are 0. Bill having garnered the requisite constitutional majority is hereby adopted. Secretary, please read Senate Bill 293.
Senate Bill 293 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, a bill we titled Enactment Article 7, Chapter 3 of Title 47 of the OCGA, relating to retirement allowances, disability benefits, and spouses benefits, so as to repeal existing provisions related to the employment of beneficiaries of the teachers' retirement system of Georgia and for other purposes. Mr. President, auditor's letter has been attached. That concludes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 8th to speak to SB 293.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had a number of retirement bills this year that I brought forward, and every one of them has been designed to enhance the financial soundness of our retirement system. And every one that I've brought forward to you has been well received by the teachers and the retirees out there. And I will always make you this commitment that if I bring you anything that somebody's going to object, I'll be upfront about it. We've got a bill right here. The addresses retirees coming back to work. They can come back to work now at halftime and continue to draw their retirement. Right now we have a situation where the local school boards have an advantage by hiring 2 retirees rather than hiring 1 teacher that's not retired, because when they hire these retirees, they do not have to make the employer contribution into the retirement system, nor do they have to pay the insurance premium for the employers. This right here takes away that. It will be equal to hiring a teacher. No difference. Is there any questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for your favorable consideration.
There are no questions, Senator. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. All those in favor of adoption of the committee substitute will rise, stand, and be counted. That's what it said. Okay. There were no objections. Sorry. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine.
On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read Senate Bill 452.
Senate Bill 452 by Senator Stone and 23rd and others. A bill will be titled and act amend Title 17, Title 42 of those J relating to criminal procedure and penal institutions, respectively, so as to require a peace officer to take certain actions upon verification that a suspect is an illegal alien, clarify and require certain actions by the Department of Corrections, sheriffs, municipal custodial officers, State Board of Pardons and Paroles, and the Department of Community Service regarding persons not lawfully present in the United States, prohibit release from confinement persons who are illegal aliens and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 452, a bill titled and act amend Title 17, 42 of the OCGA relating to criminal procedure and penal institutions, respectively, so as to require a peace officer to take certain actions upon verification that a suspect is an illegal alien, to require the sentencing court in any felony, misdemeanor, or ordinance violation case to take certain actions to determine whether the person to be sentenced is lawfully present in the United States, and if not, that certain actions be taken to clarify and require certain actions by the Department of Corrections, sheriffs, municipal custodial officers, the State Board of Pardons and Paroles, the Department of Community Supervision regarding persons not lawfully present in the United States, prohibit release from confinement persons who are illegal aliens under certain circumstances and for other purposes. Mr. President, Amendment 1 by Senator Stone, the 23rd, and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Judiciary Committee substitute Senate Bill 452 by replacing line 16 with the following. Amended by revising subsections E and G of Code Section 175100 relating to investigation of, by inserting between lines 27 and 28 with the following. G, a peace officer, prosecuting attorney, or a government official or employee in their employing governmental entity acting in good faith to carry out any provision of this code section shall have immunity from damages or liability from such actions, by replacing line 54 with the following. Department of Community Supervision and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Let me recognize the senator from the 36th to recognize a special guest.
Colleagues, I'm so happy to announce to you that we have with us on the floor today some real record breakers, otherwise known as George Clinton and the Funkadelics. All right. We are so happy to honor them and welcome them and appreciate the joy and delight that they have brought to millions of people multi-generationally. George Clinton, we thank you. We applaud you, an incredible talent that most of us in here have enjoyed in our youth and will continue to do. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Senator from the 23rd to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. I bring to you Senate Bill 452. This is an ongoing effort by our state to enforce the rule of law. I want to thank at the outset the leadership of the Lieutenant Governor in recognizing areas of the law that needed changing to ensure that Georgia does not create any havens for illegal aliens within its jurisdiction. What this bill does is concentrate on those illegal people who are illegally in our jurisdiction who come within our criminal justice system to be notified to the Immigration Department so that appropriate action can be taken. In the past, the current law of Georgia left it within discretion of courts, law enforcement agencies, and other officials. This simply makes it clear that when illegal aliens are here or picked up by an arresting officer, that the arresting officer will report that fact to the prosecuting attorney, who will use that information at presumably at setting of bond and other proceedings in the criminal case. It also ensures that the sentencing judge will notify the United States Department of Homeland Security or the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency or other appropriate federal agencies when an inquiry and determination is made and determines that the person before the sentencing judge is here illegally. Also, it requires that the Department of Corrections, when it has someone incarcerated who is here illegally, will also notify the federal authorities at least 72 hours prior to the release of that individual. And if there are detainers on that individual, then custody could be transferred to the appropriate federal authorities. This is an ongoing effort to eliminate sanctuary cities and other jurisdictions within the state of Georgia. Through the leadership of Lieutenant Governor, in 2010, we made it a requirement that local jurisdictions comply and not be acting as sanctuary cities. In 2016, we required that local jurisdictions certify to the Department of Community Affairs that they're in compliance and are not sanctuary jurisdictions. However, we still had a provision in our law that did not require compliance within the judicial system. This bill tightens that up and ensures that those here illegally will be appropriately dealt with when they come within our criminal justice system. I'll be happy to answer any questions. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well and urge your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 452.
Chair recognizes Senator in the 42nd for a question. No, to speak? Speak. No questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator in the 42nd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this legislation might sound fairly simple and common sense, but when you dive a little bit deeper, you find out that there's a number of sort of problematic and thorny legal and financial repercussions from the enactment of this statute. So I wanted to mention what a few of those things are so we have a broader understanding of the complexity of the topic that we are dealing with here. First of all, there are a number of courts. ICE detainers have been in the courts frequently over the last, 5 to 8 years. A number of courts have, in recent years, concluded that the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution does not permit state or local officers who generally lack civil immigration enforcement authority, because immigration violations are civil matters, not criminal matters, to imprison people based on ICE detainers alone. So, and that arises from the distinction between the differences in the kinds of arrest authority that are granted to federal officers on the one hand and state and local officers on the other. Congress has vested in federal officials the authority to make warrantless arrests for civil immigration offenses in particular circumstances. However, state and local officials do not have that express authority. So it's an open question if a state can extend that authority itself because of the federal government's exclusive power over immigration arrests. Such authority can only be created affirmatively by Congress, not by state legislatures. These Texas statute that has some similarities with the legislation that we're considering today has been in court over the past year, and the first court to hear the matter, the district court in Texas, obviated it or enjoined it, I believe, on the basis of that fact, on the lack of authority for the state of Texas to imbue federal authority in local police departments. Let's see, next, so what that leads to is that state and local jurisdictions take on a legal risk when they hold individuals solely on the basis of ICE detainers. What the legislation does is it sort of makes local governmental officers federal immigration officers, and then our local judges, immigration judges. As I mentioned, these matters have been heavily litigated and continue to be litigated. So there are a lot of litigation costs that necessarily will arise for state and local governments if we adopt this law. There are also detention costs, holding individuals beyond the time that they would be held on a state or local offense means that the local governments take on that additional cost of holding the individuals and their health care costs. So that is another large cost for local governments. Both of those things, the litigation costs and the additional detention costs, make this legislation an unfunded mandate coming down from the state government to the local governments, and it's unclear where the local governments are expected to make that difference up in their budgets. There will also be significant training requirements, of course, for local judges and officers that also could be quite costly. Miami-Dade County has had a policy similar to this for a year, and it cost them over $13.5 million just in 1 year to comply with it. So the question is about the financial repercussions on our local governments. Also, there are a lot of U.S. citizens that get caught up in a sweep of ICE detainers, and when local governments hold U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents on the basis of ICE detainers, the local governments then become liable for federal civil rights violations. In the Galarza case, the local government was forced to pay $95,000 to Mr. Galarza. He was a U.S. citizen, a multi-generational U.S. citizen who was swept up in an ICE detainer, obviously erroneously, and the local government was found liable, even though it was carrying out the ICE detainer that had come down from the federal government. They were still liable and had to pay for it. So again, that's a specific example, and there are many others, of the financial repercussions befalling local governments if they do comport with ICE detainers. This is one of the reasons, of course, the local governments and police officers don't like it. Many police jurisdictions feel that it makes it harder to keep their community safe and solve crimes because immigrant communities hesitate to engage with the police even more when they are deputized to be acting as ICE officers. And the final problem that I wanted to bring to your attention and hope it could be rectified potentially as the legislation moves through the process is that the Supreme Court in Padilla versus Kentucky held that that a defendant must be aware of the consequences of their plea, and it is ineffective assistance of counsel for a lawyer in a criminal proceeding not to advise a defendant of the deportation, the possible immigration deportation consequences of a plea or a conviction in court. And the way this legislation is drafted, ordinance violations are also included. Counsel is not typically provided for ordinance violations. So what we would need to do to rectify that legal problem in this legislation would be to add that the courts are going to need to tell defendants that if they plead guilty or are convicted of a felony, a misdemeanor, or an ordinance violation, then they are subject to deportation. Or we could remove the ordinance violations from the list of deportable convictions that we currently have in law. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer any questions or to yield the well.
You have a question, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator 36 for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Senator Yield.
Certainly.
Senator, you are likely to have heard, as I have heard, from local law enforcement, not only on this particular bill, but in general, that creating fear in the immigrant community makes local policing much more challenging and difficult. and that there are many in the law enforcement communities at local level across the country, including right here in Georgia, that have expressed their concern that seeking to turn local law enforcement into immigration federal enforcers is actually harmful in their efforts to police communities and be connected fully with the immigrant community who would feel free to come forward to those local enforcement officers about locally based issues in their community, but that this
yes.
type of policing
That's
is not
right,
what they
Senator.
want.
It is correct that more police departments than not do not want to involve themselves in enforcing immigration law for all the reasons I stated, including those reasons that you just stated, that they find that it's much more difficult for them to solve crimes and keep communities safe.
In fact, are you familiar with the report by the Major Cities Chiefs Association that represents the 68 largest local law enforcement agencies in the country, with their statement that their conclusion that commingling the work of local police with federal immigration enforcement efforts, and I will quote, would result in increased crime against immigrants and in the broader community, create a class of silent victims, and eliminate the potential for assistance from immigrants in solving crimes or preventing future terroristic acts. That's a statement. Are you familiar with that statement from the Major Chiefs Cities Association?
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I was not familiar with that particular report, but have heard such sentiments many times.
Additionally, you may be aware that the President's Task Force on Police stated that trust between law enforcement agencies and the people they protect and serve is essential in a democracy. It's key to the stability of our communities, the integrity of our criminal justice system, and the safe and effective delivery of policing services. And that's from the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policy.
That's exactly right, Senator.
I wonder if you are, and our colleagues, as we prepare to vote on this bill, familiar with the findings from the University of Chicago that 62% of Latinos found that police stopped them for no good cause. The racial profiling, of course, button
Right,
is
yes.
pushed,
Mhm.
and including 58% of U.S.-born Latino citizens.
That's right.
And the same study found 44% of Latinos will not report being a victim of crime to the police because they're afraid that the police will use this as an opportunity to question them about the people they know and about immigration status. Again, a troubling set of findings. I think you might agree.
I do, and actually, with the racial profiling element, I think there are probably open questions on the ICE detainers when looking at the Supreme Court's holding in the Arizona case that expressly stated that the Arizona Show Me Your Papers law would lead to unconstitutional racial profiling on its face when they struck it down. So those issues are also need vetting.
Now, Senator, this was before you were elected to the Senate, when this body has debated intensely over legislation that I would characterize as being anti-immigrant. You're familiar with that, those actions by the state Senate, I know, even though you weren't here in the chamber at that time. Is that right?
Yes, I believe the legislation you may be referring to, I may have been a member of the House when we passed it.
That's exactly right. Thank you for that clarification. And are you aware that the stories are legion of how immigrant families left our state, left jobs, left work in the agricultural sector of our economy in huge numbers in the wake of that anti-immigrant legislation that was passed then?
You speak the truth. I do recall that it was national news that our agricultural industry, the largest industry of our economy, lost something like $2 billion in profits the year we passed that legislation.
That's right, and further, isn't it true that senators who serve in this body now and senators who served this body and served their constituents and have now left office, pleaded with this chamber not to pass that damaging anti-immigrant legislation. They did that knowing in their communities the immigrant workforce is a primary and integral part of our Georgia workforce and our Georgia economy, and that they expressed fears that we would damage our economy. And as you say, we did in fact do that. Even though it was only a partial growing season, that amount of damage was done to our agricultural economy, and that is a direct demonstration of why these bills that send the wrong signals, isn't it true, to the immigrant community are not good for Georgia.
I certainly agree with you, Senator.
Thank you for entertaining my questions.
Thank you very much.
You do have a couple more questions, Senator, if you're kind enough to yield.
Certainly.
Senator from the 29th is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Certainly.
Senator, did you vote for this bill in committee?
No, I did not, Senator.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Certainly.
Senator, would you agree with me that many of our law enforcement agencies can't even afford to keep up with the competitive salaries of the state patrol, yet we expect them to be able to take on enforcement of federal immigration laws on top of everything else? Is this not an unfunded mandate?
Senator, I absolutely agree with you. I believe I mentioned in my remarks that it is an unfunded mandate, and yes, our police departments have a huge amount of responsibility on their shoulders, and I know we all agree in here that they are not paid what they are worth to begin with, and so stretching those resources even further is something that we should think very seriously about.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll yield the well.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 22nd speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I just wanted to suggest that there's three concerns that are all kind of intertwined, that the better route to go would to leave the current law as it is, which says the sentencing court shall be authorized as far as misdemeanors and ordinance violations are concerned, and then if there was going to be any change, it would only be for felonies only. The rationale being that we aren't really giving the courts, when we talk about misdemeanor ordinance violations, any true parameters to actually go by, and that becomes kind of concerning when we recognize that when we talk about misdemeanor ordinance violations, we're talking about cases that are going through magistrate court or probate court many times, and in those situations, you're dealing with two areas of problems. Number one, you have judges who do not require necessarily be lawyers unless they're in, for probate court, unless they're in counties of 96,000 or more, and not be lawyers at all for magistrate court. Also, in those same vein, you do not have a requirement that persons are actually, even from a prosecutorial standpoint, that those persons are actually from an elected prosecutor's office. Many times those persons are just part-time prosecutors. So the better route would be allow them to continue to be in a May status as far as misdemeanor and ordinance violations are concerned. Second aspect of it is, as far as misdemeanor and ordinance violations are concerned, is especially on the misdemeanor side, what you're talking about is domestic violence cases. That becomes very problematic because in domestic violence cases, what you have is a young lady, most of the time it is going to be a woman, a young lady who may be a victim of domestic violence, she may want that person to receive counseling. And as we know, the genuine way that we're going right now in Georgia is not to incarcerate persons. But we do want them to receive some type of DV training, some type of DV counseling, which can be very, very important, especially to the survivor of domestic violence. She doesn't want him necessarily to leave the house and certainly not to leave the country. So this could possibly cause a chilling effect as far as calling the police, as far as having that person at least receive that type of counseling to where they can continue to make a productive home. And then third, because we're not talking about persons who are lawyers and we're not talking about prosecutors who are coming from an elected prosecutor's office, when we're talking about misdemeanor and ordinance violations, we should probably try to give them some parameters to work from. So the better route would be to leave the law as it stands, which says they may basically inquire instead of requiring them to inquire, because you may have in felony court persons who are a little bit more experienced and knowledgeable as far as handling immigration procedures are concerned. So those are the three areas of concern that I would present to you, Mr. President. And unless there's any questions, I'll yield the well, but I will hold for any questions.
You do have a question, Senator, if you will yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, as a layman, do I understand that this bill only relates to when an officer is involved in investigating a criminal procedure versus there wouldn't be profiling or anything like that? There's got to be some kind of criminal action to have the officer take this particular action. Is that correct? Do I understand it properly? I just want to make sure it's got to be investigation of some kind of a criminal act versus, for example, just profiling or whatever terminology you want to use because they don't like the way somebody looks.
Right. But let's understand that in Georgia, as far as criminal actions are concerned, the way we structure our criminal actions, that can go from as little as a red light to a dog leash case. So even though it's not direct profiling, it could be just coming in for a neighbor disturbance, and next thing you know, you actually have someone inquiring about their status in the country, because the way we structure our criminal law, that has such broad reach.
Would you further yield?
Yes.
So, but I am right, am I not, that it has to be the premise that there has a criminal act of some type has been committed before this would happen, right? So we just wouldn't have profiling. That would be a fair statement, wouldn't it?
I understand what the senator is saying, but I think the basis of the fact with Georgia being so broad and encompass so much, you actually can have a situation where you would normally not make those inquiries. I think that's the best way of putting it.
I appreciate your answer.
Yes. And I'll yield unless there's any other questions.
You have another question. It's probably a friendly question. Senator from 36 is recognized for a question.
Senator, do you yield?
Yes.
I know that you're a member of the Judiciary Committee. Was there a discussion, or do you have any thoughts on the impact, the fiscal impact of this bill on our counties and cities, given that we know that in Miami-Dade County for 1 year they spent $13.6 million when they took on cooperating with ICE. A lot of our counties and towns are pretty hard pressed for keeping body and soul together, and I just wondered if the committee considered the fiscal impact of putting this mandate on local government.
Well, I would say there probably was not necessarily a fiscal note that was talked about or in any great depth to it. I think the larger concern, number one, is actually going through the parameters of how to make these decisions, especially from a judicial standpoint, of how do they make these inquiries. And that's why I said it'd be better, the better route would leave it to be from a felony standpoint. So you have a felony standpoint, you have a serious criminal action that's taking place. If you have a misdemeanor ordinance violation, you literally could be talking about from a red light to a dog leash case, and also the type of persons who are going to be making the inquiry. Now that we have Shell, you have persons who are not necessarily as broadly learned as someone dealing in felony court.
And I appreciate that. And so doesn't that mean that local law enforcement, if they're going to be in compliance, they've got a lot of work to do and expense in being sure that local law enforcement has some grasp of federal immigration policy and enforcement, and that's going to all cost money on our localities. Isn't that the case?
I would say I understand where the senator is coming from.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Senator.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to be clear about a couple of points. One is that all illegal aliens are subject to deportation. So whenever we're talking about the specific crime that's involved or the specific criminal offense that occurs, that part is kind of immaterial because all illegal aliens are subject to deportation. I do think it's important to note some congressional testimony that was given in 2015 by Jessica Vaughn from the Center for Immigration Studies. She was quoted as saying to a committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, what I'm told by ICE officials, and I've been told on a number of occasions, is that they believe from their internal data that there is a recidivism rate of about 50% of criminal aliens who are released by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And then she was asked further to clarify that she in fact meant 50%. And she said, right, that's both criminal aliens released by ICE and also those criminal aliens who are released by local law enforcement agencies that want to obstruct immigration enforcement by not honoring detainers. Vaughn noted that based on the approximately 36,000 criminal aliens who were released in 2013, a lower percentage, 16%, went on to be arrested again by local law enforcement agencies. So I think it's important to note that all the bill before us does is require that notice issue when there has been a criminal violation. I know most of the folks in this chamber are familiar of the case involving Kate Steinle. Kate Steinle is dead today because an ICE detainer hold was not respected. And I think at a minimum, the idea that, there ought to be a notification that goes out so that ICE can act is important. This bill can save lives. This is not, an opportunity for somebody to make some political points by smearing the author or those of us that believe strongly in the idea that we still respect the rule of law in this country. And that's all the bill does. It's a very modest requirement that information be shared so that the law can be enforced. And I look forward to voting for the bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Questions on the adoption of the adoption amendment number 1 authored by the senator from the 23rd. Is there objection? Without objection, the floor amendment authored by the senator from the 23rd is adopted. Now the question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute as amended is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreed in the Report of Committee which fair will pass the bill? Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on to pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. And the secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 36, the nays are 17, and this bill, MC represents constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read Senate Bill 294.
Senate Bill 294 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 7, Chapter 2 of Title 47 of the OCGA relating to retirement allowances, disability benefits, and spouses benefits, so as to require certain public employers to make employer-employee contribution to the Employees Retirement System of Georgia on behalf of certain employed beneficiaries and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement offers the following accepted Senate Bill 294, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 2 of Title 37 of the OCGA relating to administration of mental health, developmental disabilities, addictive diseases, and other disability services, so as to remove a cross-reference to amend Chapter 2 of Title 47 of the OCGA relating to the Employees Retirement System of Georgia, so as to require certain public employers to make employer-employee contribution to the Employees Retirement System of Georgia and for other purposes. Mr. President, an auditor's letter has been attached. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 8th to present the bill. Please give distinguished Retirement Committee Chairman your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is a mate to the one we had just a while ago that dealt with the teachers' retirement system. This one just deals with the employees' retirement system. We won't have any objections from any of the employees. Only people that might have a little heartburn with it is the department heads that's got to cover this additional cost. Any questions? If there are no questions, I yield the will.
There are no questions, Senator. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree and report of committee which fail pass the bill. Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. All of those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0, and this bill, MC Reps constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read Senate Bill 324.
Senate Bill 324 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill entitled Act to amend Code Section 32-4112 of the OCGA relating to contracts with state agencies and adjoining counties so as to provide that municipalities may contract with abutting counties for the construction and maintenance of bridges within the limits of such municipalities and counties and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the distinguished Public Safety Committee Chairman, the senator from the 56th, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very simple bill that just clarifies in the law that cities and counties are to work together through the code in order to help work together where a bridge comes together. We already have that outline when they come together on an intersection or a road, and this just provides clarities for our cities and counties so they can work to help replace and repair our existing infrastructure. If there are no questions, I will yield the will.
Chair recognizes the minority leader, the senator from the 41st.
Senator yield?
I yield.
Thank you. So this is really an act of clarification. There's already been some cases where they probably have coordinated on bridges, but this will make sure that it's empowered to them.
That is exactly true, Mr. Leader.
And let me ask you one further question, Senator. Where you've included a municipality may contract with any county abutting them, had you considered adding in county or other municipality? Some of our cities butt each other and may have a bridge in common. Is it legal for a city to contract with another city on the building of a bridge?
We believe that was already in the code, Mr. Leader, and this was just to clarify where they're coming together, such as an area of North Fulton, which goes into Forsyth County, or to Cobb County or Cherokee County. We're encouraging them to work together, and this just clarifies to make sure there's no concerns.
Thank you, Senator. No further questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agree and report of committee which failed pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? All those in favor of this bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 2. This bill, MC Rex Constitutional Majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read S.R. 821.
Senate Resolution 821 by Senator Martin IX and others, a resolution recognizing Augusta as an official cybersecurity information technology innovation corridor and Savannah as an official logistics technology innovation corridor in Georgia and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Rules Committee offers the following subject to SR 821, a resolution designating the Fort Gordon Cybersecurity and Information Technology Innovation Corridor and the Savannah Logistics Technology Innovation Corridor as official technology innovation corridors in Georgia and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 9th. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, SR 821 will establish the Fort Gordon Cybersecurity Innovation Corridor in Augusta and the Logistics Technology Innovation Corridor in Savannah. During the off session, we had an IT corridor study committee that met around the state, and these two communities, it was determined these two communities will benefit greatly from this designation. It allows them to better market themselves and tell the world that they are a great place to do business for the IT in the IT world. And I believe this will help them to do that. I ask for your favorable consideration, and I will yield unless there are questions. Thank you.
Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute? Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree and report of committee which fail will pass the bill. Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the bill, yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this resolution, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read S.R. 794.
Senate Resolution 794 by Senator Miller of the 49th and others, a resolution creating the joint Georgia-North Carolina and Georgia-Tennessee Boundary Line Commission and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the distinguished President Pro Tem of the body, the Senator from the 49th, present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I come before you, ladies and gentlemen, today to speak with you about the joint resolution between the House and the Senate on the boundary between Georgia and Tennessee, and to once and for all resolve that and send this straight on to Washington. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
No further question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the resolution? Is the objection agreed and report of committee which fail will pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chair is none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question is on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no, and the Secretary will unlock the machine. On this very controversial piece of legislation, two members of the body sided with North Carolina and Tennessee. I mean, is this a Rocky Top thing or what, you know? On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 2. And this resolution, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read Senate Bill 350.
Senate Bill 350 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, a bill entitled Enactment in Code Section 3339.5 of the OCGA relating to transactions requiring notice of information practices, form and content of notice, abbreviated notice, and a satisfaction of obligations by another institution or agent and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor offers the following substitute Senate Bill 350, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 3339.5 of the OCGA relating to transactions requiring notice of information practices, form and content of notice, abbreviated notice, and satisfaction of obligations by another institution and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Perry. Senator from the 20th is recognized to present his bill.
I know we're all familiar with information practices notices that you get in the mail, otherwise known as privacy notices. They're kind of aggravating. Congress amended the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act recently to only require insurance companies to send those out one time initially with a new policy as long as the company hadn't changed their information practices. This bill simply makes Georgia law mirror federal law and makes it clear that these only have to be sent once. If there are no questions, I will yield the well. Thank you.
No questions, Senator. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree and report a committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none, report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs none, main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Okay, for planning purposes, so everyone knows, this will be the last bill we take up before our lunch break. And lunch has been provided for you in the anteroom. Would take a short recess for a lunch break in light of all the bills that are before us today. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Senator from the 53rd has got the hey, and is wishing to be recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for the hey. I should have done a hi. But hey, I just want to tell you about
Yeah.
Senate rules will be tomorrow at 10:30. We'll meet. If you have a bill before rules, you need to be there and ask for your bill. We'll meet from 10:30 to around 12. Then after that, we're serving lunch to the entire Senate members and support staff of the Senate Rules Committee. So please be sure to be there. I'll be in room 450 at 10:30. And we'd like to make sure we put the best bills on the floor for Wednesday, which is crossover day. Thank you, Mr. President.
So that's lunch will be provided for the entire Senate, not just committee members. Is the press corps invited? No, they're not? Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Worried about Salzer back there. He might miss a meal. Senate stand at ease until 1 o'clock.